Hey, Greg, how are you? Greg, you gotta unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm here. Good, good. So, yeah, do you want me to stay on mute or you wanna how
Well, it
you
doesn't matter.
want to?
I want to have some kind of discussion going on. Hi, everybody. Hi, Anna. Hi, what's the name of this second participant? Judy, how are you? Uh, Unfortunately, going to have over 100 people today, so we're going to stay muted. And if people are going to have questions, we're going to raise hand. Hopefully, everybody knows what it is, but we're going to go over the rules today as well. Happy holiday today, guys. Not really a holiday type of, or maybe it is a holiday type of topic, We'll see. Let me just grab water. I'll be right back. Greg, would you do me a favor and admit everybody as they're coming?
Okay, do I have authority?
You have a permission, yeah.
Sure, definitely.
Hi, everybody. We're kind of be starting 5-10 minutes into the 12th. Apologies. Supposedly there's going to be, well, today's a holiday, so I don't know how many people will show up, but it's supposed to be over 100 people. But welcome to our meetup group, ancient history meetup group. Today is kind of like an off topic a little bit. We're going to talk about promiscuity or sexuality in ancient Greece, Rome, and Egypt. And Greg is going to help me out with a couple of points here, particularly. And then, I wanted to make it all about Rome, but you can't talk about Rome without talking about Greece, and you can't talk about Greece without talking about Egypt. So they all kind of interconnected. So believe it or not. So like I said, we'll give it 5 to 10 minutes. We're going to talk about our group as well. We have live and less of a live group these days, but in-person group. We basically have mostly Zoom connection group where we talk about ancient history. And like, for example, some of our topics include, tomorrow we'll talk about medieval Armenia, right? Interesting topic. And Sunday we have a topic like history of EU, continuation of our series from 1946 and up. So we talk about the foundation, the politics, and creation and the beginning of the EU. While we know that in the countries like Yugoslavia, they were trying to segregate and separate the former Soviet Union, EU is trying to unite as being one front. So it's mostly Richard and Aaron presents in those days. Tuesdays is Richard presents his Middle Eastern series. And part of the Middle Eastern was the history of Armenia. And we talk about basically Crusades, Ottoman Empire. On Saturdays, we have topics like ancient Rome. We last year went over ancient Greece and Mesopotamia, over 2 years now, almost. Now that we're through COVID, hope this is going to be lifted. But at some point when COVID is going to be easing up, and we've kind of like start getting together, mostly in New York, but we'll do other cities as well. We do get together, go to the, restaurants, sometimes ethnic restaurants, like Persian, Russian food, Uzbeki food, you name it, Greek food, and then we go to the museum to commemorate it. And New York is a melting pot, so it's easier to kind of do that. But right now we're mostly Zoom, and because we were scared of Omicron. Well, everybody's scared of Omicron. So like I said, Greg is going to be helping me today a little bit. So bear with me. Everybody's muted, but we do expect people to ask questions. This is an interactive group. We are not scholars here, and I'll go over the rules as well. And we're just enjoy talking to people about ancient history. We're not experts, but we founded this group about 7 years ago, but we went online after the COVID hit, and we've been there ever since. But we do anticipate, once COVID releases, somehow maybe getting into person as well at some point, but also continue the Zoom. Has been so successful, and I don't know if Robert is around. Robert has been instrumental in bringing awareness to this group as well. Let me see if he's on. I don't see Robert. He may not get on today, but I do want to thank him and his group, Culture and History, DC, New York, and now he's expanding into UK, and he has over 4,000 members there in each of the group. I think in DC one is 50,000 members, so really thankful to him. Like, for example, yesterday we had a great presentation on Islam 101. So that's why today's topic is a little bit going to be light. And I'll talk about again about the rules, but I do want to give people a warning. There's going to be some explicit materials, but mostly ancient artwork and nothing. And we're going to talk about some things, obviously, that's maybe construed as being offensive. So if you do feel offended, It's any point, I do understand, and you can, kind of log out, and please keep the comments and questions, going, but be respectful. We're here, a group of friends, and we're trying. If I will anticipate there would be a disrespectfulness in any kind of way, I'll probably kick people out. But mostly, if you keep it pristine and do oblige to the ethics of the group, I appreciate that. Oh my God, it's already 38 people, so we're gonna give it a couple of more minutes. So I want to talk about my group. We have a website, and I'll go over it. It's called Omnicron. I'm sorry.
Omicron. Yeah.
I apologize. I'm sorry. This was really bad joke. I apologize. So I'll talk about the group, but our group, meetup group, is ancient meetup, mostly ancient group. We're on YouTube channel called History of Fitness Investing. Mostly it's going to be history related. And I'll talk about our website as well. And I may also unmute some people to help me for the presentation and ask questions to keep it more interactive. But as you know, there's going to be so many people, so we'll answer all your questions on the comments, and hopefully Greg is going to help me in reading those questions, and maybe you'll help. Yeah, I appreciate that, Greg. That's really amazing. Thank you. Greg is our co-founder as well of this group, and the group has been growing. So sorry about that, Omnicron. It wasn't even a joke. Sorry.
But the name of the site is kind of similar, right? You didn't mention that.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to talk about it. I just want people to understand that it has nothing to do with the current variant. It has to do mostly with English rule that I think of 1200s that came about. So let me see if anybody. I don't see Robert. Let me see. No, Robert. I don't see also. So I mean, we usually like to kick it off, and Greg always been asking where people are from. Where are they hailing from? So if anybody wants to maybe put in the comments where you guys are from, and what do you like in history, particularly because we're mostly ancient medieval history. Would like to kind of get feedbacks. What interests you the most? Like obviously today's subject matter is kind of an outlier because it's it's interesting. But if people can put in the comments, I don't know if I disable the comments. There's nobody commenting, but go ahead and do that and tell me where you guys are from. Just one word, and what you like in history. What are the most maybe there's a character, maybe there's a movie, maybe there is a particular period. You can talk about Bronze Age, talk about. So let me just read some of that. So we have Netherlands, interested in Roman Byzantine history. Yes, we're going to talk quite a bit about that today. Milton Keynes, UK. Wow. Greetings from Pomona, MD. Wow. London, love Roman era. Here we go. We might be getting some help from you guys today because, like I said, me and Greg are not experts, but we'll talk about it. Oh, here's, is there any sound yet? What do you mean sound? Can you hear me, Greg?
I can hear you. Everything seems to be okay. Can you guys hear
me? Laura is not hearing me yet. Sorry.
Well, if you don't hear, is the best way is just to log off and log back on. Yeah, that's usually the problem on your computer.
Where's Arizona, ancient Rome, Chicagoland area, Greek and Roman mythology. That's awesome. All right, yeah, ancient Rome. So yeah, I guess let's just start going a little bit, and Greg is going to keep up with questions, and maybe you can stop me at any point, Greg, to add anything or ask a question. Like I said, everybody's mute today due to the fact that there's so many people, but we are broadcasting on YouTube. If let's say you're cooking and they want to get off for a second, and we're on Facebook as well. I'll talk about that as well. I did post it on the UK and my groups where they're located. Again, YouTube group is Fitness Investing, History Fitness Investing, and Omnicom group is on the Facebook, and our website is Omnicom as well. So okay, ancient Rome seems to be, and ancient Greece seems to be the hit, and Middle Eastern history is awesome. All right, so Greg, you monitor the people. Thank you, I appreciate it. And then as I come to the Tarquinius, I'll let Greg talk as well, and then maybe Greg is going to help me with some Osiris story. But you know, we'll take it from there. Again, this is not going to be scholastic. This is when we're expecting people to ask questions. Please, you know, shoot up as many questions as you want. Just, you know, again, be ethical, because there's going to be some explicit materials, but it's mostly ancient history explicit materials. So, all right. So we're going to talk about sexuality. Initially, I posted was, you know, ancient Rome, but as you know, Rome was a little bit more prude compared to Greece and Egypt. So I kind of wanted to show people that Greece and Egypt has something to do with, you know, Roman sexuality, and therefore they're interconnected. So we'll talk about the rules for a second. All right, so again, the warning, the following images are graphic in nature, may not be suitable for everyone. So if you don't feel like, you know, but it's ancient graphics. Sorry, I'm already jumping into it. The rules, you know, again, you know, non-academic presentation, secular presentation. So there's not going to be any religion connotation to this. Be respectful, as I've said in the comments. And when at the end of it, I'm going to start unmuting people. If you raise your hand, I'll unmute you and you can ask a question. Please do ask a lot of questions, you know, clarification, notes. You know, some materials might be, you know, hearsay or myth, and you wanted to add something, go ahead. You know, it's 101, 201. We are family here with us, and there's going to be a recording available. So I'm going to hit the recording now, which I forgot to do. Record to the cloud. All right. So our group, like I said, it's a meetup group we have. It's called History Most Ancient Discussion in Any Language. We haven't discussed in any other language except English so far, but I'm thinking expanding it. You know, if you want people to do presentation, Spanish, Russian, Hebrew, whatever other languages you want to do, you know, contact me. You know, we can do that. Our website is called omnicarta.org. And our YouTube channel is called History Fitness Investing. And you can watch over 210 videos there on any subject matter, such as Mediterranean history, Middle Eastern history, Roman, Greek, you know, Mesopotamian history, you know, you name it, Bronze Age, collapse, for example. We have many histories on that. We have history of World War II, particularly battles of Kursk, battles of Stalingrad. So should be interesting there as well. All right, let's move on. All right, so I'm going to start obviously walking in step by step. First, I want to start with ancient Egypt, right? So imagine, you know, God is actually masturbating the world into existence. Out of the semen came male and female God, who then reproduced through regular sexual reproduction and created successive generation of male and female gods. That's how Egypt saw you know, creation of their land. And so let me just move on to the next. So basically, we're going to talk about God Osiris, and the creation of Egypt obviously comes with that. Isis, Osiris, Seth. And we're going to obviously talk about the famous Turin papyrus, and that's where I wanted to start. So All right. So let me go back up one. All right. So how did the Egyptians saw, obviously as a myth, the creation of the world? Right? Osiris, which was the god of skies in Egypt, basically was invited to a party by his brother Seth. Right? We know who the Seth is, and it was basically as a party favor. They were kind of locking each other in coffin, right? So Seth kind of lay in a coffin, and he told Osiris, like, listen, why don't you go ahead as a party favor, go ahead and lay in a coffin, and that would be on a kind of like a party thing we're doing. So only in Egyptian festivals would a coffin be an appropriate party favor, right? So driven by jealousy, Seth was so jealous of Osiris because Osiris was married to Isis, and Osiris, basically, was locked in this coffin instead of, as a party favor. He was locked and he was thrown into a Nile, right? Nile, we know, is in Egypt. And so now his wife Isis, an Egyptian, god, can't find Osiris and looking for him everywhere. But while she's looking for him, Seth kind of hacks away Osiris in pieces, and after Isis found him, she found all his body parts, but she can't find his phallus, right? And obviously, in Egyptian mythology, all the gods need to reproduce. And what she had found out, his phallus was eaten by a fish, right? So what's interesting, Osiris then, binds her husband body together, turning Osiris into a first mummy, right? That's how the mummification came about. For thousands of years, Egyptians will imitate this story, carefully wrapping the corpus of their loved ones. Osiris, however, finds another way to ensure that immortality of Isis finds another way of ensuring the immortality of Osiris. By her magical powers, she recreates a new penis and then was able to impregnate herself through a divine husband, bearing him a son, an air god Horus, right? So ancient Egyptians believed that their civilization was formed by the mixture of incest, masturbation, and castration, which is what this story is all about. So just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So next, I want to talk about this famous Turian painting, right? So in 1821, after a long empire, Egyptian empire has already been gone. European armies already occupied the land. There was an Italian researcher, his name is Bernardino, Combs, sort of through the ruins, find in a village called Deir al-Madina, looking for artifacts, find this 3,500-year-old artifact, probably through 3rd century, which was left there, during around the time of Amenhotep, which we know Amenhotep was a reformist pharaoh and trying to change the religion and moving the capital, from the Thebes to another place, and therefore a lot of his artifacts were erased. But apparently he finds this one, and so what does he find, right? So he buys a huge cache of papyruses. This is a papyruses, right? Documents he unrolls one and finds the set of shocking erotic cartoons, right? And we're seeing right now one of them, right? So what does this cartoon does? So he has wild scenes of men and women in most controlled position performing intercourse in the most bizarre ways with all the sorts of different, accoutrements, right? I mean, they're hilarious scenes, right? We're not even sure they could be reproduced and, in physically can be reproduced. In one scene, a woman is engaged in intercourse, which we're looking at, with a man with enormous phallus, while she has a little hand mirror putting eye makeup. In the village of Deir al-Madina, architects find evidence that sexual vitality was a mind of the average Egyptian. So they talk about sex constantly. They thought about sex constantly. The ruins of the village was littered with statues of Hathor, the goddess of love, and Bes, and male god of fertility, best portrayed the dwarf with a large phallus, right? Let me just admit more people. All right. So now, so what's interesting is, so he finds all this and he's shocked. And he doesn't understand how is it possible. Like in one of these pictures, there's a woman in a chariot and they're trying to have an intercourse, but how is it even possible? As you know, it's virtually impossible. It's like almost having an intercourse in a moving car. So we'll get to that, why it was depicted, right? So this is a Turin papyrus that I'm talking about. So,
hold on a second. There is this question when this myth was discovered. The question is about the creation myth. When was it discovered? That's the question, I think. I see. Any ideas?
The idea is a myth, right? So it's a almost nationally created hearsay about gods. As you know, it could be a combination of people adding it throughout the years and taking stuff out. I mean, it could be, maybe it was a non-sexual type of creation, and then somebody added it to make it more colorful. But people thought of Egyptians as being very gloomy society, thinking about a book of dead, thinking about dying, but they were actually very colorful. People were very confused. They lived very colorful lives, and they celebrated life. They wasn't thinking about death as much.
Yeah.
They just thought about basically afterlife. That's different.
I actually wanted to add, I mean, this is not that there was one discovery. There are many versions of the creation myth in Egypt, and it's been gradually discovered on this in pyramids and in different tombs. So we know that Egyptology as a science started after the Napoleon invasion in the early 19th century, and discovery of the Rosetta Stone, and that when the hieroglyphs would deciphered, and after that they started to understand what's written on the walls of tombs, and because there are more and more discovered tombs and the pyramids, and there are many versions of creation myths. They come but you pick your favorite one.
All right. So let's talk about, like I said, Egyptian life. Now they're obviously depicting all these things, but why were they depicting these funny scenes, right? Apparently, Egyptians made fun of their criminal la crème, or their bureaucracy, because of the corruption that was going on in the society. And by them depicting, this was a political statement, by them depicting this sexual scenes, they were making fun of their pharaohs, their bureaucrats, and as you know, the priests were part of the Egyptian society and had a lot of bureaucratic roles. In fact, at Pharaoh and the dynasty of 23rd dynasty or 24th dynasty was actually all run by priests. But we know Amenhotep, was able to diminish the priestly class due to the fact that he changed the religion completely, and therefore took a lot of the land, a lot of the dowry and donations that people were leaving in the temples that otherwise was seized by the priests, and they were saying it was donations to God. All right. So what was so important about Egyptian society, right? So let's talk about women, men, and how they all perceived. So married women often tattooed images of dwarf beasts on their thighs, right? So the tattoos were prevalent in order to show their sexuality. They would, tattoo the, dwarf Bes, who was the fertility god. Egyptians were a very sensual society. The women, with their beautiful gowns and clothes, in ancient Egypt, especially women, really enhanced their bodies, right? Oddly enough, so what's interesting fact is people may not know, people think the Egyptians may be very stinky, but they actually had a lot of aromatherapy and a lot of colognes that they've used. And what for them was most important, importantly, obviously, the scorching sun, how white the pharaoh was or how white the person was, it shows them an ability. So they were trying to stay from the sun. So they were trying to keep the umbrellas over their head or at all times. Oddly enough, there was no disapproval of premarital sex in ancient Egypt. So what's interesting, they didn't look at sex the same way we did, right? We don't even have a word for a virgin in ancient Egypt. It doesn't exist, which is very odd because so many written records, so many written records, and there's not even a one word for a word virgin. Most women married at puberty at 12, 13 years old, and boys a few years older, because we'll think about the average age, and Greg might stop me, but was it 30 years old? People were dying at 30s and 40s. To get to I think Ramses and some of the pharaohs got up to was 60 years old. That was very, an unlikely feature, but he was a pharaoh, right? So he had a lot of medicine and physicians at his disposal. Scholars believe there was no wedding. So there was no weddings, right? Couples simply just moved in together, right? Kind of like, cohabitants, Adultery was considered shameful, right? In Deir el-Medina, archaeologists found the legal records in where they found this Turin papyrus that suggested adultery was not uncommon, no. It was frowned upon, but it was not uncommon. There was once a man, they're talking about this one man, his name is Paned, during the Amenhotep time, right? You would think about, when they were building the pyramids at the time, 3rd century, a famous workman in Deir el-Medina, this guy Paned, who had sex with a lot of women. They were married and even had sex with women and her daughters, and his son also had sex with those women and their daughters. So there was absolutely no ethics when that concerned. And when faced with marital vows, Egyptians invented divorce. So Egyptians did invent divorce, in a serious, and basically one of the mysteries that ancient Egypt tried to solve is how to not get pregnant, okay? So how did they do it, right? So they had two different remedies. One remedy was honey and combination of dates and acacia bark as a contraception, or crocodile dung, right? So they used whatever it was at their disposal. Those substances were inserted into vagina. Certain bodies were not delivered to the embalmers, as a husband would be afraid of necrophilia. So necrophilia was very prevalent. They had sex with mummies, or dead people. Pharaohs maintained harems, right? For example, Ramses was called, for instance, he fathered 55 daughters and 45 sons, and his royal title was powerful bull, right? He is the whole harem to himself. All right. So particularly, they had a couple of artifacts that were interesting. This Ankh, right? They are, basically by having this around, they were achieved the orgasm with internal life. Orgasm is connected to universal heart chakra, and the properly controlled orgasm will lead directly to internal life. This was basically a version of Tantra, if you think of current. And then the second factor that they also had is called sistrum, which is this instrument that basically resembles an Ankh associated with a Hathor and Isis, and it would play as an instrument, and it welcomes fertility, right? So kind of like a side note. Prostitution in Egypt. So I'm going kind of quick because we need to get to the Greek and Rome, and so let's talk about prostitution, right? Prostitution distinguished themselves by wearing this fish scale dresses, and it's called blue fiends had fishnet dress with nothing underneath, right? They had tattoos over their breasts and thighs, and they also had red painted lips, all right? Early religious texts assume that man will be able to revive fully and will be able to have sex again in afterlife. So what they did, they basically inserted rods inside the mommy's penises to keep it all erect at all times, right? So kind of a joke, don't close your casket, you know, type of thing. So you know, that's Egypt. Let's get to Greece. Any questions? Anybody wants to add any questions or want to add anything? So let me see if there's any questions on the chat.
Not yet, but please put your questions in the chat.
Put your question in the chat, and if you want to raise hand, I'll unmute you, and you can ask a question over the nothing. Okay, so let's get to Greece because we really want to get to Rome as well, and I have a couple of videos I want to play as well. So Greece. All right. All right. So what was interesting about Greece, right? We're talking about love, sex, and you know, and things like prostitution, just to compare to Egypt. We should not think of Greek sexuality as compared to our own these days, right? It was pattern behavior that belonged to a particular part of life, right? So this was just a part of life that they had to, every male, you know, had to go through. Most Athenian men might have sex with both females and males, so they were bisexual. But we don't think of them as bisexual at those times. They didn't think of themselves as bisexual. I'm just talking about as in today's terms. So put your kind of like open your mind in this case, right? It is also does not refer as to the Greek sexuality as compared to the modern, you know, modern concept of bisexuality. They did not perceive sexual orientation in terms of life choice. Instead, Greek regarded one's sexuality as pattern of behavior that belonged to a particular part of rather than a condition. So it was just a behavioral type of, you just go through it at a period of time and then you stop. Furthermore, they did not distinguish sexual desire or behavior by the gender of their particular participants, but rather by the role that each participant played in the sexual act. That is the active, and again, I apologize if this is offensive, penetrator or passive penetrated. This active passive polarization corresponded with dominant and submissive social roles, right? And we'll get into that, you know, we're talking about the patriarchy, for example. The dominant roles, or one who made love, called Aphrodisian, was associated with masculine, higher social status and adulthood, while passive role of the one who would made love to was called Aphrodisa, Zastai, was associated with a femininity, lower social status, and youth. Okay. So, why was it important, right? Let's get into patriarchy, right? The oldest male was a household was basically the head of the household. The member of the family, you know, if they committed the crime and they had male job to take responsibility, accept punishment, right? Kind of eye for an eye. The head of the family can force marriage on his children, divorce, slavery, and whatnot. And women could not hold property, control their dowries, receive some education, but could not both participate in politics and hold jobs. That's in ancient Greece. All right, let's continue.
Hold on a second. There is again another question: is what year are we talking about? I don't know if you refer to Egypt.
No,
I guess
this is around Solon time, and you know Solon was what is it? We're talking about
in the 6th century BCE.
Yeah.
So
and
it's I would say, if I may, that there are certain in history there are certain periods, and there is of course Mycenaean periods, the Dark Ages, which Mycenaean is between 1800 and probably 1200, and then there is the Dark Ages from 1200 to sometimes about 800. And then there is an archaic age between 800 and 500, and then there is a classical age after 500 BCE. We're all talking about BCE. So this is probably archaic and classical age that we're talking about Greece.
Right. And in the Egyptian one, we're talking about Middle Kingdom, right? So we have Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and then you have more closely to us, this is probably around the time of invasion of Hyksos and stuff like that. So, whoops, sorry, I'm moving in the wrong direction. All right, gender roles. Women were expected to mind their household. They were passed from guardianship of their father to their husband, right? Women and children were the husband or father's property. That was Greek type. Men were expected to run the household. Men chose if a child was to live or to die. If deformed or sickly at birth, we know Sparta, they were thrown. If they were, they were left to die. And transgender or anything outside of the gender binary were not acknowledged, right? All right, homosexuality. So when I was talking about patriarchy, that's important to mention that. So the dominant role of one who made love, called aphrodisia, was associated with masculinity and high social status, as I've said. While the passive role was the aphrodisias astai, right, the low social class. So it's important to note that I already mentioned it. Most widespread and social accepted same-sex relations were between adult man and adolescent boy, known as pederastia, right, which really means boy love from Greek word pathos, boy, and eros, love, right? Right now it's looked at as negative, obviously, but it just means, pathos, boy, eros, love, pederastia. The boy is misleading. Age limit was 12 years old, right? So it wasn't really a boy, it was, adolescent. This relationship continued until boy was able to grow a beard. Boy grew a beard, they're done, right? He can go in his own ways, and this relationship stops. So it was just a passage of life at that time. So dominant partner was a role model for his passive partner called aramenos, or beloved. In terms of actual sexual activity, it was very controversial in itself, right? In this relationship, there was also an education component or role of the mentorship, representing some kind of transition into adulthood, because the role of aramenos was meant to be temporary, right? So it was like a mentorship program, stuff like that. The ritualistic and initiator origins of pederasty are not universally accepted by the scholars. It seems to lie in the tribal past of Greece, before the rise of the city state as a unit of political organization. They were called policies, right? So I don't know, we just get to that. And again, next image is going to be a little bit more graphic, but what can I say? That's the that's the Greek art. All right, so what we're talking about, the tribal communities, right? So before policies were created in Greece, there was tribal community, right? We know the Dorian Greeks or Illyrians that came to the, after Mycenaean and Minoan lived there. They lived in tribes before the policies were created. So there was a passage of life. So this tribal community were organized according to their age groups, right? So it was several age groups. When it came time for the boy to embrace the age group of adults to become a man, he would leave a tribe in the company of an older man for a period of time that constitutes the rite of passage, all right? The older man will educate the youth in the ways of Greek life and responsibility of adulthood. Greek city-states established pederasty as a social and education institution. It was an important element in the civic life, military, philosophy, and the arts. In Crete, for instance, once a man selected the youth, he had to get the blessing of a boy's father, who naturally had to approve him as a worthy of the honor. So imagine this, some adult rich man from Greece, let's say Salon, approaches a father and says, listen, I like your son. He looks, incredibly handsome, and I would like to represent him, be with me at this party we're getting together for this, festival, and if is it possible, would I be able to would I be able to see him there? The father says, yeah, go ahead, because the father is afraid that there might be repercussions. So then, not thinking of anything, obviously this young adolescent shows up at the party, and what, let's say, Salon does is he introduces this young boy to all of his co-associates, and he says, he came with me, and look how handsome he is, and they're all admiring his handsomeness. And then, in that regard, anything can happen. They can go into separate room and do whatever they have to do, or he could basically just end it there and just send the boy back home. It was kind of like a social admittance type of thing. And even though he had a wife, it's still bringing a young boy was for them something, because to admire his handsomeness. And this picture basically points that out. So let's just go through that.
If I may add a little bit here, so this could constitute a relationship actually that could last for quite a while, and they're not purely sexual. They often offer a mentorship. So the older man becomes a mentor and participate in education and sharing wisdom, guidance to younger men. And as you know, the word mentor comes from the Odyssey. The mentor was the name of a friend of Odyssey, whom he left in charge of education of his son, Telemachus. The other example of this relationship, like the famous example of this kind of relationship, is the relationship of young Philip, who was father of Alexander the Great. He was taken hostage to Thebes, and he was a Romanus of the famous general Pelopidas at the time. So this was supposedly a very famous relationship. He was a young man at the time, probably around 16. Another thing I wanted to add, that I guess the adulthood in Greece probably was around 20 years old. This is the time when adult men in Athens would be able to start voting. Before 20, they could not vote.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg, for the additions. Appreciate it. So then after he talking to his father, he then enlists this chosen one friend to help him, and they carry the youth to the it's called the Andrani, in a sort of men's club or a meeting hall. So that they had they considered, after taking this boy, they would went to this men's club. You think of it, like the present day country club or something like that. The youth received gifts, and basically, along with a friend, went away with him for 2 months into the countryside. So this older gentleman would take this younger gentleman, and they would go in countryside, hunt and feast, and basically enjoy the relationship. At the end of this time, the philanter with 3 contractually required gifts. So they had a contractually required gifts that they would give to this young adolescent, and the gifts would be military attire, the oxen, and a drinking cup. Right. Upon their return to the city, the youth sacrificed the oxen to the Zeus, and his friends joined him at the feast he received. He received the special clothing for adult life, which marked him as a klinos, or famous or renowned. Right. So after he passed this passage, this initiation was called a parastesis, and or he would stand beside, perhaps because, like Anamedes, the cupbearer of Zeus, he stood at the side of the fellator during the meals, and Andreon served him with a cup and had been ceremonial presented. So basically, the cup was given to his young adolescent, and during the parties, he would serve to his mentor. It was an elaborate social code. Boys could choose their mate. As for a female, they were married, and marriage was arranged. So that was a big distinction. A boy would choose their mate, and the women were not. They're not privy to do that. The main literature source, lyric poetry, Athenian comedy, some works of Plato and Xenophon, and courtroom speeches from Athens. They're talking about this stuff. There was about also hundreds of vase paintings, which you're looking at one of them, from 6th and 5th century BC, that depicts scenes of sexual activities in regard to pedestry. In particular, that are featured on a black basis and show three prevalent scenes. The Aristeas stroking their chin while fondling his genitals. The Aristeas presenting the Aramenos with a small gift, sometimes an animal such as rooster and hare, or the engage into intercourse sex, which is type of non-penetrated sex in which a male places his penis between a partner's thighs, often with lubrication and thrust, to create friction. This practice was called dermizing. Okay, so Frank just raised hand. So let me unmute Frank. All right. Frank,
Yeah, hi, Zach. No, I just wanted to catch what you were saying there with the primary sources. You were mentioning something about courtroom speeches, Plato, Xenophon. What is this like a particular? Yeah, what particular literature were you referring to there in terms of one of Plato's dialogues or whatnot?
There was a bunch of them. They were written in Republic. There was a bunch of them were written in. There's no particular pages, but I can go back and I can.
That's fine. So Plato's
Yeah.
Republic. Okay, got it.
I would say specifically a symposium. It speaks more of a relationship, what they call platonic relationship, that usually didn't end up in the sexual particular ones, but as you know, platonic relationship that we use right now between men and women, the way I understand, in ancient Greece, it was referred mostly between two men, and specifically a platonic relationship was designed in that dialogue symposium after the relationship between Alcibiades and Socrates. So Alcibiades was a youth, and they meet in this symposium, to celebrate Dionysia, win for the dramatist Agathocles, and there they discuss Alcibiades kind of talks about his love and admiration for the Socrates, and Socrates in terms talking about the virtuous relationship that they had. So that's the symposium is really talk, but it's not really sexual. Some people interpret it as it was, but a majority of the historians believe that's what the Platonic relationship is based on, like it was modeled after. Later on, also Aristotle wrote in Ethics, Nicomachean Ethics. He wrote about what he titled called perfect friendship, and Alexander the Great kind of modeled this relationship that supposedly was also involving sex with his general Hephaestion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank, for questions. And anybody has any more questions, please raise your hand. And then, I'll unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask a question. So we went over this slide already. Orestes, the older, more worldly and experienced male. Aramenos is a young man, still in his teens, before he can grow a beard. They had this relationship going, and the relationship were often set up by a family and a friend as a rite of passage. And you can think of it. It wasn't any kind of penetration going on, and I would have already explained what they considered to be a sexual relationship. It was between, almost you can think of it as a teacher and a pupil, right? So the bond between Arsenis and Aramenos was considered stronger than that of a friendship. Even further in life, when they already not together, they still were talking to each other and giving each other advice. They would remain friends and companions for life, basically. So let's go on to the next slide. All right. So social acceptance, right? Many people were obliged to uphold paideia, a complex system of restraining and chastity. Male citizens were expected to have extramarital with both female and male partners, which I explained to you. And one thing I just wanted to mention is the chastity of the Vestal virgins. They would not break their chastity to keep that fire going for the rest of it. The reaching power most dead.
Excuse me a sec. You already went to Roman sexuality?
No, I'm kind of easing into it right now. All right.
Okay, because I have a few things to say about
we'll get to that.
prostitution in Athens. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So go ahead, talk about the prostitution. Right. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. If we talk about the Greece, so the prostitution was legal, and the taxes were instituted by Solon, which is, we're talking about 6th century BCE. So they were basically divided on the low level prostitution, like poor people. Those prostitutes were called pornai. That's the word porno came from. And they were mostly either slaves or metics. Metics are non-citizens, non-Athenians. They were considered much lower standard people. And of course, we heard about the Hetaeris, or Hetaeris. This was a high class prostitutes, and these were not only, it's more kind of like an escort, you could compare it. So these were educated women who spent time and could speak on many subjects, including even philosophy. And of course, the most famous one is Aspasia, who became a consort and concubine of Pericles, the most famous leader of Athens in the 5th century. And eventually, usually Hetaeris were exclusive. They had relationship with their clients. We know that Aspasia even gave a birth to a son to Pericles the younger. And after Pericles' legitimate sons died in a plague in 430 BCE, he had to change the law, what children that become legitimate, to legitimize his son, because he was the only son left is from Aspasia, because he made a law that in order to be an Athenian citizen, not only that the father had to be Athenian citizen, but also the father of the mother had to be Athenian citizen. So he implemented that law way back. Now he had to change it back, that only father was sufficient. So it's just a little bit of that part. Okay.
Just to add to the Greg, thank you, Greg. So the prostitution was institutionalized by Solon, right? We know Solon that came up with the Greek democratic rules, credited with being the first to institute state brothels with regulated prices. He said that the purchase of slave women and put them to work in brothels at a price which everyone could afford. So he was kind of like, you would think of him, a giving to the society by saying, like, if you would give it to society, they would rebel less, and therefore there would be more stability. The classical Athenian considered prostitution as part of the democracy, right? And Philemon highlights the Solon brothers provided a service accessible to all regardless of income. There are numerous allusions. The price of one oval for a cheap prostitute, no doubt only for basic acts. And it is difficult to assess whether this was the actual price or proverbial amount designation a good deal. Regardless, one ova is 1/6 of a drachma, It was a daily salary of a public servant during the classical period, right? The range, what was offered, is described by the 4th century comedian Xerxes in his fragment from his play, the Pentathlete. In our city, there are after all very good looking young things in whorehouses, their breasts uncovered, stripped for the action, and drawn up in a battle formation by columns. One can select whatever sort one likes: thin, fat, squat, tall, shriveled, young, old, middle-aged, horse. Name those that they drag into a house: little father for older gentlemen, little brother for younger. All right. All right. Now we're gonna come to Rome. All right. So kind of like building our way to Rome. As we know, the Rome, kind of sexuality. It doesn't really start with Pompeii, but because of the Vesuvius eruption, it had preserved a lot of that there as well. And this is a picture of Lupana in Pompeii, which is basically Lupana is, you can think of it as a whorehouse in Pompeii. So the researchers believe that the founding of Pompeii was founded about 7th to 6th century BC. It became a Roman colony actually in 80 BC, right? After unsuccessful rebellion against Rome. But at the time of the destruction, the population was about 11,000 people, right? Cool. City had a complex water system. It had gymnasium and amphitheater and a port. Of course, like us, Romans and Latins had been having sex forever, but according to the Roman historian Titus Livius Patavinus, aka Livy, soon after the founding of Rome in 753 BC, sex attained an undeniable and inexplicable political and historical importance in the annals of Rome. Right from the start, if anybody remember the rape of Sabine women, that's how the Rome was created, basically recreated. The first instance was in 750 BC, rape of Sabine women, a carefully executed example of national building in which the Romans replenished their dwindling supply of fertile women by carrying off of wives and daughters of the neighboring Sabines. So next one I want to talk about is Greg is going to mention this one. And Greg, I'll let you talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. We want to talk about the event called the rape of Lucretia.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, so this is, there are pictures of, I don't know if that's the Titian picture, but he also represented. So this is a very famous story that supposedly led to the collapse of Etruscan domination and the rule of kings or rexes, and the establishment of the Republic. So we're talking about 509, 510, 509 BCE. There are 7 Roman kings traditionally. I mean, there could be more, but that's what's recorded. And the 3 of the last ones are considered to be Etruscans. And it really says that a part of the Roman population were Etruscan, and the Etruscan domination that they started to rule Rome. So the last, the first one was Tarquinius Priscus, who adopted Servius Tullius, and then eventually Tarquinius the Superb, Tarquinius the Proud, who married Servius Tullius' daughter, Tullia. Actually, both of his daughters came and assassinated him. Supposedly, that's the story. That's a little background. So he was ruling, and his son Sextus Tarquinius was talking to his friends. Some of his friends and some relatives, kinsmen. One is known as Colotinus, and the other one is Brutus. we know with the name Brutus, Junius Brutus. That's his ancestor, supposedly, about the virtue of their wives. And everybody was promoting that their wives are the most virtuous. So they visited all of them, and most of them they found in the company of other women, just talking. But the Colodonus wife, Lucretia, was alone, and she was knitting. So she was like a paragon of a Roman matron kind of virtues. So again, Sextus, of course, liked her very much. It had some lust, and eventually he came later on in a clandestine manner, found her alone, and basically told her that she should submit to his desire, or he would accuse her. He would kill some slave and accuse her of adultery with a slave. That was probably the worst possible violation of ethical norms in Roman society. That would be like horrible. Well, she didn't agree anyway. He raped her, and later on, she brought her father and her husband Colodonus and some witnesses and confessed of what happened, that she's been raped by Sextus Tarquinius. And after making her confession, she pulled out a knife and killed herself. So that called the outrage. And supposedly, so we know the stories, by the way, from Livy is the main source, and also Dionysius of Halicarnassus, which much later. Livius lived at the time of Augustus, the end of the 1st century BCE, beginning of the 1st CE. So eventually that led to the oath that leading citizens took. They incited the masses. The oath was that they will never allow a king to rule Rome again. And it led to the revolution. Tarquini the Proud and his family were expelled from the Rome, and they established a republic with all kinds of rules. And the first 2 consuls of the republic were Colodonus and Brutus, supposedly. That's what we hear from Livy. Of course, this is semi-legendary story. I mean, we don't have direct sources from that period. We're talking about 510 BCE. Livy lived 500 years later, and whatever the sources he used, we don't know how reliable they were. Most of the Roman sources were burned at the time of the invasion of Gauls at the beginning of the 4th century BCE. So that's the story.
Thank you, Greg. So this painting actually was a print from Tedium Paintings and Drawings, introduction by Hans Tietze, Faden Press, Vienna. And what it depicts is basically, Virginia was stabbed to death in 449 BC by her own father to avoid the shame of violation, which is what Greg was just talking about. And what's interesting, and he also mentioned later, Roman historians like Livy embellished the legendary women of the past with their sexual mores that they insisted their contemporary women should enshrine. Okay. All right, let's talk about the Pompeii brothels, right? So this is some of the depiction from Pompeii brothels, and if you look at this depiction, for example, the penis is drawn on the floor, is basically showing where the brothel is located in Pompeii, finding the way to the brothel. This is obviously the bed in the brothel. It's kind of hard to do it. It's a rocky bed, right, so to speak. And this is different acts that were depicted, and they were depicted not just in brothels. They were also depicted in the bathing houses. And what's interesting is they would depict the action that would take place, right? So that's an interesting fact. So let's just talk a little bit about the sex in Rome. So sex for most Romans was undoubtedly gratifying, right? But it was more of a duty, right? Largely speaking, it was probably more gratifying for men, but less so for women. Why so? Men delight in displaying their manhood, and sexual prowess, while women obliged by submitting to a serious childbirth, a production line of babies and ideally boys to maintain family and line and keep the battlefield and farmland stocked with recruits, right? They're basically machines for farm boys. Baby girls, on the other hand, were costly and contributed little or nothing to the family income. Moreover, they would require an expensive dowry one day. Indeed, marriage itself was a lopsided affair. According to the man, women who married should not expect any pleasure or enjoyment. They tied the knot simply to procreate. Okay, so basically, they should not enjoy the relations. Moreover, the silent and compliant and subversive wife was expected to turn a blind eye to her husband's sexual infacilities, right? So he would go and cheat on her with whores, or you'll have somebody on the side, while the man could philander as much as he liked, so long as a mistress was unmarried, or if with a boy he was over a certain age. Brothel prostitutes and dancing girls were considered fair game, as were older males, with the one crucial proviso that it was you who did the penetrating. Being passive and being penetrated was considered woman's work. Men who submitted were considered deficient in and in virtus or virtue, they were denounced and reviled as effeminate. Brothels let us turn now to for example, I just wanted to point out to this very famous Claudius, Messalina, who was the imperial queen to the famous Emperor Claudius, and that's going to be a next. She actually, turned up a game on this whole prostitution. So Messalina, empress to Claudius, queen for the imperial, they call her queen of the imperial horse. She's said to have regularly snuck out of the bed while Claudius slept to visit fatted brothels. Using the working name Lucisca, or wolf bitch, Roman author Pliny the Elder tells that distasteful story of Messalina epic orgy, in which she challenged a veteran prostitute for a 24-hour sex marathon. The empress won with 24 partners, one client per hour. Okay, so that's how crazy that even emperors engage in this type of activity. And depiction of Roman Empress Messalina naked in Lupanar brothel was with a soldier. This is what you're looking at this picture. Wall decorated with erotic painting and statues, colorful painting. So now, go ahead.
Just wanted to add. By the way, the lupanarium or the brothel or lupanar or lupanarium, they often called it. It comes from the word lupa, which means prostitute, and the word lupa basically in Latin means she-wolf. Lupus is the wolf, and lupa is the she-wolf. So that's how apparently we have similar in many languages associations, but that's what the word coming from. Well, the other thing, probably many of you have read the Robert Graves books, I, Claudius and Claudius the God. He wrote 2 books, and he basically describes, he took the information from Livy and many others. No, I'm sorry, not Livy. Livy was dead by that time. I think Tacitus and Suetonius, yeah, those 2, and he described a lot of adventures and a lot of things that Magellan did. So if you haven't read it, you definitely should read it. It's a great books, and of course the famous BBC series, long time were made. They were also fantastic.
All right. Well, as I've mentioned, a lot of these depictions were actually in bathhouses, and the bathhouses were also was a social place to chat, massage, exercise, have a game of dice for Romans. They were a place where people meant to meet with their friends, political allies, business associates. Those are sort of a social club, gymnasium, and a health center. In the back room of the bath, graffiti suggests sexual activity. Apelles with a Dexter, the slave of the Caesar, had sex together, for example, one of them. Graffiti also suggested that member of the party group had food and prostitutes brought for their pleasure. Bath in both cities extensively used marble. All right, so let's just move on to, okay. So now we come to this, Augustus, and what happened is, Augustus, basically forbids the adultery and tries to strengthen family values, right? For this reason, paid sex and sex with household slaves became simple and legal alternative to adultery. Prostitution increased, right? So the registration, for example, for each of the person that you want to commit an adultery, want to see a prostitute, would be they have to give it their name, age, place of birth, and what their nickname was. Kind of like a license to prostitute. And women, married women could be prostitutes as well. All right. So now we're going to talk about, maybe jump years into Byzantium. So by the end of the Republic, however, illicit and extramarital sex was seen to be damaging and rampant. And that's why Augustus came up with this rule where he suggested that people should go to prostitute homes that commit adultery. But he didn't know about his daughter, Julia, right? Augustus, he himself also was engaged in the sexual activities, extracurricular activities. However, easily eclipsed by his wayward daughter Julia, that's her picture you're seeing, who is said to have fornicated on the very podium from which her father had delivered his moralistic legislation, where he told people don't commit adultery. The Julia she called life was a beach, right? Her analogy that she never took a lover on a board unless her boat was full. That is, she was pregnant, rebounded badly. Her father eventually exiled her to remote island Pandaria off the coast of Campania. Okay, just to show you that, or even the gracious emperor had, a lot of the rotten, children, so to speak. So let's talk about maybe prices in the Pompeii brothels. The Pompeii prices were between 2 to 18 asses, which equals to $68 to $540. Gold currency depends on the service and the brothel's pimp, right? Some older gladiators were expensive because they were serving high-class women and men. All right, moving on. So if we fast forward to 525 AD, sex was still a major Roman life, right? And I'll show you a picture of this famous, oops, let me see if I have that picture. Oh, somebody, let me just admit somebody. So I don't have her picture, but Theodora, who was the empress to Justinian I, worked in Constantinople brothel performing mime and obscene burlesque. One of her star roles was a Leda in Leda and the Swan, right? This involved lying on her back while actors scattered barley on her groin. The barley was then packed up by Greece, masquerading as a Zeus, inviting fellow actors to copulate with her on a stage. Was another of the Theodora body's pieces. But Theodora was later transformed into a virtual sainthood with her raft of the social reform, protecting women from physical and sexual abuse and discriminating and acting when she assumed the position of empress. All right. Sorry. All right, next. All right, so I want to talk about this writer Seneca talking about the prostitutes, and he said in his famous slave prostitute sale, he's saying, naked she stood on a shore at the pleasure of the purchaser. Every part of her body was examined and felt. Would you hear the results of the sale? The pirate sold, the pimp bought, that he might employ her as a prostitute. So just to show what the writers looked at as a prostitute, you know. So now I want to play a small video, if you guys don't mind, and talking about the Pompeian sexuality in Pompeii. All right. Let's move on. All right. So see if there's any questions or anybody wants to ask a question. Believe, but thank you for the fantastic presentation. Thank you, Jessica. Anybody has any questions? Wanted to ask anything? No. Okay, so we're moving on then. All right, so the authors that contributed to the understanding of Roman sexuality, Catullus, range of erotic experience, Cicero, speeches, attack, and opposition of sexual contact, Ovid, emphasis on rape and using mythology. Right? All right. Now I'm going to play one more video. So what does this, all of this mean? So it's only 4 minutes, guys.
I and my friend Claire Pickersgill from the Nottingham University Museum wanted to collaborate on an interesting theme. We're both Romanists, so it had to be something Roman. And we thought, what about a part of Roman life that we don't normally hear about that is of interest to everyone? So we chose sexuality, Roman sexuality. And we chose as the star object the Warren Cup, one of the prize objects in the British Museum. And we wanted around that to build an exhibition that would put the cup into a context to explain what sexuality meant to the Romans and to show all its different aspects.
With the University of Nottingham Museum, we have a lot of Roman material, mainly from the local Roman site of Margoduna, which is at Bingham. And we have this on display with different topics. So, for example, we have something on Roman religion, Roman food and drink, Roman personal adornment. And I was interested, therefore, in doing another Roman topic. And so this topic, especially when Paul had offered the Warren Cup, it sort of presented itself. And I was also particularly interested in it because it's well, it's not a topic often discussed, and there's also a lot of misunderstanding.
The Warren Cup was made about the turn of the 1st century AD, so about 15 BC to 15 AD. And it was found, so the only reference we have says, it was found near Jerusalem. It's a silver drinking cup, and it portrays 2 couples of male lovers. And it's unique. It's the only representation of male lovers in a silver cup or a gold cup to have survived from antiquity. So it's a very important piece. It was bought by an American collector who lived in Britain, who lived in south of Britain, in Lewis in Sussex, called Ned Warren. it stayed in his hands until the late 1920s. When he died, his heir tried to sell the piece, and he tried to sell it to various museums, including the British Museum. But we were unable to buy it. It was considered difficult to display. And the head of the trustees of the British Museum was the Archbishop of Canterbury, which may have played a role. So it went abroad. It was exported, or tried to be exported, to America, but the customs at America didn't like the look of it, so turned it back. It was in the 1990s that it was first displayed in America, in the Metropolitan Museum of New York. And then in 1999, the British Museum acquired it formally, and it's been in the collections of the British Museum since then.
What's so interesting about it, this is a silver cup, of course. It would have been owned by a particular class of person, but what we do have, we have images of the sexual act on lots of different objects, on lamps, on vases, and these were objects that everyday people would be seeing and using. These weren't expensive objects. And also the other thing about these is that they do vary. I mean, some of them have very tender scenes, some of them do display the actual sexual act.
I mean, what the objects together can tell us, and this is the value really of bringing objects together in an exhibition like this, what they can tell us is that the picture we have of the Romans, either from the Victorians or even from the Romans themselves, when the Roman writers are writing their volumes, their poetry, they tend to be of a particular social class, writing for a social class, and often writing for a particular gender, i.e. males. So we don't get the full picture. So when we look at the objects, we begin to get a much fuller picture and a much more diverse view of sexuality than the Romans themselves would have had us believe in their writings.
All right. Sorry. Go next. Anybody has any questions? Wanted to ask anything? Oh, sorry, guys. All right. I guess no questions. Moving on. All right. Male-to-male relations and nicknames. So let me just go through. So same-sex in ancient Rome was same-sex sex. In ancient Rome were thought to be fine for men, albeit with conditions. But same-sex between women was unconditionally execrated, right? Was not fine. Lesbian sex often assumed, often assumed penetration, which was considered men's work. So a woman adopting this role and her submissive recipient were castigated in equal measure. The Latin for the lesbian woman was a tribates or fricatores, those women that robbed, right? So Roman men kept their male concubine, one who lies with, bed before they married a woman, right? So they had their male concubine. Pathicus was blunt word for the male who was penetrated sexually and derived from the unattested Greek adjective pathikos, from verb pasciam, equivalent to Latin deponent petior, petty, passus, undergo, submit, to endure, and suffer. The pure delicates was an exquisite or dainty child slave chosen by a master whose beauty as a boy toy. Pulus was a term of young animal and a particular cheek. It was an affectionate word traditionally used for a boy who was loved by someone in an obscene scene. So let's go next. Gay marriages. So although the general rule regarding marriage as heterosexual union for the purpose of producing children, in early imperial period, the gay marriages was allowed. Roman law did not recognize marriages between men, but one of the grounds and disapproval expressed in juvenile satire is a celebrating the rights would lead to the expectation for such a marriage to be registered officially. As empire was becoming Christianized, the 4th century legal prohibition against gay marriage began to appear. All right, homosexuality. Now we already mentioned some of it, but the Roman law that historians believed was created to penalize any male citizens of high standing that took a willing role in passive sexual behavior. Roman man was acting like a real man, as long as he played the active role with the males or females indiscriminately. So Platos, between 35 and 36 EC, no one prohibits anyone from going down the public way, as long as you do not make a path through a posted land, as long as you hold off from the bridges, single women, maiden and youth and free boys, while whatever you want. All right. Sexual relations in military. Roman military. As we know, it's a big part, and Roman army and legionnaires were involved in building roads. But what happened to the, in Roman army, basically there were prudes, and Augustus even prohibited soldiers from marrying, a ban that remained in force for imperial army nearly for 2 centuries. Other forms of sexual gratification available to soldiers were prostitutes of any kind, male, female, and sex among soldiers, however, violated Roman decorum against intercourse with another freeborn male. So that was not allowed. Gender identity, right? Right? Puella is a clothing that served no purpose other than to mark its wearer as a child or a minor. Puellebria are the garments that characterize and mentor families. Communa, those that are common, that is worn by either sex. A man who wore women's clothes, as Ulpian knows, would risk making himself an object of scorn. Female prostitutes were the only women in ancient Rome who wore the distinctive masculine toga. The wearing of the toga may signal that prostitutes were outside the normal social and legal category of women. All right. So there was this law that was created called 12 Tables. 12 Tables were written in Roman Forum in 450 BC, right? The excerpts were all written by a commission of 10 men, decemviri, appointed to draw up a code of law binding both patricians and plebeian, which consuls would have to enforce. The 12 Tables reveal how, despite the fact that Roman society was still mainly very patriarchal society, and that the women were still expected to submit themselves to the father or a husband, there was still a certain case allowed to object to their husband's marital control. If a woman is unwilling to be subjected in the matter to be husband's marital control, she shall absent herself from 3 consecutive nights in every year, and by this man shall interrupt his prescriptive rights of each year. Okay, so that was created. Charter of Urso, right? The Charter of Urso was written by Caesar, right? And 44 BC. Mark Antony would later enact the laws after Caesar as well. The people of ancient Rome at the time seemed to have little importance in government, except in the electoral body. Legislature was bestowed in the Senate. The barrier with the gender in government was only that man could only be a part of it, and women weren't allowed. No politician women. The Charter of Urso contributed to the society of ancient Rome by enacting a set of laws that women, but also men, must follow, making it equal to both genders. So that's important. All right. Just want to talk about this satire by Juvenal very quickly. So the source was written in 115 CE or AD, written by Juvenal, a Roman poet, who was either adopted or a biological son of a rich freedman who was pupil of Roman rhetorical Quintilian. In the poem, Juvenal is talking about how marriage shouldn't happen. He talks about many women who would cheat on their husbands. He talks about how men sometimes act greedy and are okay with getting cheated on as long as they get dowry. He also speaks about wealthy women and their obsession to look good all the time in order to show their power. They hire maids and spend money on outfits just to show off. He said that the poor women are more likely to have children and wealthy women are more likely to have abortion in order to not deal with all the work and comes with having a child. All right. Moving on. All right, we already spoke about being effeminate. So the patrician, pathicus, the blunt term derogatory referring to the woman who had been continued to be anally penetrated. Synados was a man who wore loose clothing, perfume, and curled hair, walk in a mincing manner, who enjoyed being anally penetrated. All right. Roman, well, I don't, you know, for the sake of time, let's just move on. All right, I want to get to the emperors. Oh, I want to play this video for you guys.
Sex is one of the things that's always absolutely enticed us about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire's was always represented, you know, the place where people did, you know, frightful things, and where, in a sense, there were no sexual rules. Anything went. Everybody had a good time, and there are indeed wonderful stories about the excesses of Roman emperors and their wives. One of everybody's favourites is the story of the Roman Emperor Tiberius, who used to go off to his villa in Capri, where he had a great swimming pool, and he had specially trained little boys who swam underwater while the emperor was swimming and nibbled his genitals, and he called them his little minnows. And it wasn't just the emperors. There's a very famous Roman empress, Messalina, who was the wife of the slightly doddery old emperor Claudius. And she is supposed to challenge the prostitutes of Rome to a competition to see how many men they could sleep with in a single night. And of course, Messalina beat all the prostitutes. Now, some of this might be going on, some of this, but I suspect that just as those kind of exploits of Roman emperors are our fantasies, you know, can we think of the most amazing things that people can get up to? So also they would have fantasies of Roman writers too, when they kind of invented these stories about people in power. And you know, I think there are very, very important differences between ancient sexual behaviour and our own, but they're not quite so clearly in the level of absolute excess. And I think for a woman, the biggest thing, the biggest difference you'd see is a complete double standard. That's to say, in an ordinary Roman household, the woman was expected to be absolutely faithful to her husband, no sex with anyone else. The husband, it was quite all right for him to sleep with the slaves, male and female, anybody he fancied. There was no such restraint on him. And of course, that relates in a way back to the basic anxieties and worries of a very patriarchal community such as Rome. That, you know, the man's anxiety was always that his wife's child was really his. So you make sure that your wife sleeps with nobody else. But as for you, it really doesn't matter. And I think one of the bleakest places actually that you can go to in the whole of the Roman world now is the one surviving purpose-built brothel in Pompeii. It's certainly a brothel, there's absolutely no mistaking it. You walk into the front door and there's 5 little cubicles, narrow, dark, just a single bed in them, sort of wide single bed, and one lavatory at the back, and very crude but erotic paintings all over the walls. And it's the biggest tourist attraction actually now in Pompeii, and people go in and they tend to think of the clients coming here and, you know, visiting, choosing which girl to have, and lots of graffiti on the walls explaining in quite graphic detail what they got up to, you know, what kind of good time they had. But I go in and I think, gosh, you know, some people were working here. You know, the working girls were spending their life tending to the sexual freedom, allowing the sexual freedom of the male population while they lived in what was essentially a cupboard, dark, gloomy cupboard.
All right, so let's move on to the next. All right, so there's a question that came. Let me just. Greg, you want to read the question? Sorry.
The question.
Yeah.
Where's I don't see the question.
So it says, how did the abortions were performed in ancient Rome? So from what I know, they took a poison that caused the abortion, particularly, and it could have been, certain herbal medicine that they used. There was nothing physically was done. It's just the poison that would cause the abortion. I don't know, Greg, if you know more about it. You just
no, I don't.
All right. So if anybody has any more questions before we have a couple more slides left, and then I'll open up for questions. Somebody just put something in the chat. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Cool. So group sex, right? We know Nero. We know Caligula, even Caesar and Augustus. It was well known that while the orgies were looked well upon by the authorities, they didn't really stop people. Rich man had crazy orgies, and I know Nero had special island were dedicated to this, and I will talk about them right now. Next slide. All right, so the sex also featured prominently throughout the short, unspeakable, disgusting life of Emperor Agabalus. So that's one of the most notorious, emperor you can think of, even more notorious than Nero. And I mean, as far as sexual prowess is concerned, he lived around 203 to 22 AD. So he was notorious basically to the fact that he was a notorious transgender, a deviant, bested by the gender confusion and depravity, right? Not the fact that he was only transgender, it's just he was, the way that he did it. However, he could not be accused of lacking a sense of humor. According to the sensationalist Historia Augusta, collection of the biography of Roman Emperor, so he took lusts in every orifice of his body, sending out agents in a search of men with a large penises to satisfy his passion. The size of the man's organs often determined the post he was given. Okay, he would promote people based on their genitals. He habitually locked his friends up when they were drunk, and suddenly in the night let into the room lions, leopards, and bears, ceaselessly rendered harmless, so that when they woke up, these friends would find at dawn, or worse, during the night, wild animals in the same bedroom as themselves. Several of them died of shock as a result of this. Things went further still when Elagabalus offered huge fortunes to any physician who could give him permanent female genitalia, or in the words of Roman historian Cassius Dio, contrive a woman's vagina into his body by means of incision. So he was completely, and then we obviously know Caligula and Nero and whatnot. And the last thing I wanted to do is play the last video. Then I'll open up for questions. It's called Filthy Romans.
As we have previously discussed, ancient Rome was a practical cornucopia of sexual deviant behavior. While we have already covered some of the more sexually depraved facts about this city, and even did a quick discussion on the infamous Caligula, however, 2 videos just wasn't enough, and we're going to give a quick list of some of the other worst things that those morally bankrupt emperors did in their time. Once again, these facts are most likely unsuitable for those who are easily offended. We'll start off with a few facts about the Emperor Nero. Nero Claudius Caesar took the position of emperor in 54 AD and ruled for 14 years until his suicide. While the emperor was infamous for his many sexual depravities, let's start off with one of the lighter ones. Nero was known to take long road trips to different parts of the empire. However, this was long before the days of satellite radio or a portable gaming system. So what did he do? Well, along the planned route of travel, various booths and rest stops were set up so that he could satisfy his urges, if you know what I mean. Let's keep rolling with Nero for a minute, and let's move on to some of the worst facts. So, while on these trips or just traveling around the capital, Nero would sometimes share his litter with his mother, Agrippina. While this isn't 100% confirmed, apparently, Nero was known to enjoy the physical company of his mother during these trips. The supposed proof of this was in the stains on his robes upon exiting the litter. Also, Nero would eventually try to have his mother killed. Just throwing that out there. All right, one more on this weirdo. Nero also apparently had a thing for pretending to be an animal, taken to the extreme. He came up with a game where he would actually be locked in a cage, where he would cover himself in animal skins. People, it is unknown if they were willing participants or slaves, were then tied to stakes in front of the cage. Nero would then be set loose, and he would attack both the men and the women in the most inappropriate ways he could think of, acting the whole time as if he were a wild animal in heat. Nero wasn't the only one who liked to keep things in the family. Emperor Claudius, who served as the emperor just before Nero, from 41 to 54 CE, tried to marry his niece, who also happened to be named Agrippina. Apparently, this was a popular name for incestuous families. Claudius was so in love with his niece that he actually went so far as to convince the Senate that they should convince him to marry her for the good of Rome. You have to at least admire his commitment, I suppose. We're going to end on one more just so I can take a shower for the next couple of hours. The Emperor Elagabalus ruled Rome from 203 to 222 AD. Not only did this man set up an imperial brothel, which honestly wasn't that uncommon, no, the strange thing was that there was only one worker at this brothel, the emperor himself. In the palace, he set up a set of rooms and would wait outside the doors and solicit those who were passing by. Now, of course, you can imagine that an emperor would be very upset to hear that no one wanted to pay to have sex with him, so members of the emperor's inner circle would actually pay people to walk by and inquire about the services that were provided. Elagabalus was so proud of his work that he would actually compete with other prostitutes about how many customers he had and how much money he was bringing in. Get paid to do what you love. Isn't that the dream? All right, I'm going to go shower for a couple days to get all this filth off me. So thank you guys.
All right, I'm going to mute everybody, and if you have any questions, I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and I'm going to unmute everybody. And then I'm going to stop the recording. All right. All right, everybody's unmuted. If you have a question, you can just go ahead and start talking. So again, thank you for participating in this, maybe a little bit inappropriate, but at times just still a historical, mythological type of event. So if you have any questions, please shoot at me and Greg, or we can probably as a group can answer.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself, I guess.
You can unmute yourself, yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna ask everybody to unmute, I guess.
Or you could put the question in chat.
Or you can put a question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. About 20 people on right now. I actually unmuted everybody already, but I don't know what's going on.
Okay, there are some questions here in the chat.
Somebody said speechless.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Beverly.
Hi. So under what circumstances did this lifestyle change? Was it when the Rome, when Rome became Catholicized?
Or Christianized, right? I mean, initially,
Yeah, right.
initially it was not a Catholic religion. It was just general.
Christianized. I mean, is that what put an end to this type of lifestyle?
No, actually, Augustus had came up with a bunch of laws. So Caesar to promulgate the heterosexuality and also say there's no longer adultery permitted, and the possible relation could be only between men and women. And then when the Christian it became more Christianized, then obviously your Bible forbade, not to have relations between men, women with women. But in the early republic, it was very prevalent. And so we're talking about all of the BCs having to have homosexuality and all this male to male loving and all these things going on. And then after the republic was diminished and the emperor came, they kind of tried to, mostly to the fact of control, try to collect as much money as they can, because prostitution brings taxes, right? So they're trying to make it more taxable event, so to speak. It was always a profit involved as well. So, Greg, you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, listen, we talked about emperors who were depraved. I mean, nothing could stop the emperors. The Empress Theodora, famously at the time of Justinian. This is in the 6th century AD or CE. So it's way past Christianization. So it's. There is a difference between how emperors behaved, especially those who were crazy, and regular people. But I think the homosexuality was maybe not very acceptable anyway. It's
But not in Greece, obviously. That's why we went through. That's why I wanted to go through Greece, to show you that.
I'm talking about for the regular people. I mean, it was not. It was probably for patricians, and it did happen, of course, but I don't think it was like so open and acceptable. It was still looked down upon. Even in the Roman time, for instance, the act of fellatio was considered to be degrading, and that's one of the reasons people went to the lupanariums.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And weren't most people working people? So actually, this kind of behavior could only be enjoyed by those who had money.
Yeah, but I mean, lupanarium was very common, and poor people went there as well. But yes, of course, people who really need to work for living, they don't have as much time and energy, and they don't. There is less depravity, I guess. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also not, apparently prostitution wasn't frowned upon in Pompeii, and some of the empresses were.
Yeah, it was legal. It was legal in both in Greece and in Rome. It was legal, and it was regulated. It was taxed. Actually, Emperor Caligula imposed a tax on the prostitutes so that the state could benefit.
Yeah. Any other questions, additions? We have another, so to speak, 8 to 10 minutes, but we can go on. Interesting subject, but just to reiterate, we are, a regular group. We don't do this type of subjects every time. But for example, I want to put up a schedule of events that are coming up. And again,
And just wanted to add, like looking the comments. I mean, keep in mind that the slavery was legal also, and it was normal to use slaves and as low-class prostitutes. But generally, let's say in Athens, Athenian citizens would rarely get involved in that. It would be like really destroying them forever. Even Aspasia, the famous hetera, she wasn't Athenian. She was from Miletus in Ionia in Asia Minor.
yeah, thank you, Greg. So today, for example, and then on every other Saturday, we do Roman type of subjects. So, for example, next week, we have Paul is going to present on the very famous senatorial family, Gracchi, and their predecessors. So please join us on that one. And we're going to talk about slavery in ancient Rome in February. And I'll talk to Beverly about that. On Sundays, we have kind of like open subject format. We talk about Hyksos on 210 and the 20th, I think it's 23rd dynasty, intermediate period. There's going to be Lisa and Richard presenting. And then in March, we're going to talk about the Qing dynasty and warring states in China. And in May, we even do a reenactment, Roman soldier reenactment. And on Tuesdays, we have our regular Middle Eastern history, which we're going to talk about medieval Armenia. And then moving on to next Tuesday, the Golden Age or Solomon the Magnificent. And we do have also European Union series. Like, for example, on this Sunday, we're going to talk about the history of the European Union or present institutions, basically, present institutions. And then the following 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the legal functionality of the European Union. We do literature pieces. We're going to do Marcus Aurelius. So you can see there's none of this stuff are, promiscuous or sexual in nature. This was just like a one-off type of thing. But like I said, do join our group and join our YouTube channel. And I can share that with you right now as well, kind of to show you what kind of videos. I mean, you saw a video today, but let's just, I'll show you a short video of the things we do. For instance, like this is our website called History of Fitness Investing. And this is a short video of, Jewish Wars by Josephus. So take a look. And then I apologize for the, what should I call it? If this was not professionally done, I'm not a professional. This is just, we're doing it as a hobby. And then I'll show you a website. Let me just stop sharing and reshare a website. And then you can take a look and see, what type of stuff that we do. This is our website. It's called History of Fitness Investing, omnicarta.org. Not Omnicron, I apologize, I misspelled it before. And then basically, if you want to join any of our social networking, which is YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok. Or if you want to see our YouTube channel, just click on it. It'll take you to the YouTube channel, schedule of events. Right here, this is all our video. We have over 200 videos. And then schedule of events. It'll show you what stuff we have coming up. And if you want to join our meetup, like I said, just click on a meetup and then you can join our meetup. And there's a links to that as well. And I also had mentioned the meetup is called, and history mostly ancient, and it's and it's right here as well. Let me just stop sharing for a second and then we share again. Sorry. This is our meetup. We have 349 members on this one, but I have about 6 groups that work together. So just to show you, if you look at the Pro Dash, so in addition to 343 members, we have about, well, I can't, something that's not working. We have other groups that do the same thing. Basically, I just, Chicago, New York, we have 2 New York groups, but this is a Pro, and then this is, just to show you how many more members we have. We've added over 600 members in about 90 days or so. I'll show you in a second. So in total, well, 823 RSVPs and 400 members plus the 329. That's a non-public group, that exclusive group. But we all do the same type of thing. And so it's about 400 members joined in 90 days and stuff like that. So we're rocking, cooking with gas. Any last questions, or if not, let me see if there was any questions. I don't think so. Oh, I don't suspect there was much general disease. Beverly, thank you, Zahar Greg. Very interesting. Okay. Well, in that case, I wanted to say thank you, guys, and I wish everybody a nice the rest of the well, in New York, it's a holiday weekend in the United States. If not, have a nice evening, and I'll see you on hopefully tomorrow presentation for the medieval Armenian, or this week or next week, whenever you guys want to join. And have a nice evening, or day, sorry, in this case. Thank you.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye, Craig. Thank you.